Well, welcome back to Talent Talks. I'm Jonathan Reynolds, your host, and I'm sitting here with a fascinating guest today, who is, well, his name's Caleb Spitler. It's good to have you here.
Thanks, Jonathan. Good to be here.
And you hail from where?
Right now, I'm in Racine, Wisconsin.
Where are you originally from?
Originally from central Wisconsin. So, Watoma, small little town.
Ah, nice, nice. In this the last few podcasts, we've been talking everything to do with the people, humans, how we interact, how we inspire one another, how we grow, how we do what we do in business. I think being in business is an absolute privilege. I think it's a privilege to be in the world of making profit for good. I just think it's a huge opportunity to do good in the world, which is big heart behind kind of why Titus exists. And we work with loads of other small, mid-sized, and large companies around people strategy, helping them with how to hire people, how to retain people, how to engage people. And I recently bumped into you, and you started talking to me about this topic that you've been on just traveling all over the country, speaking on and working with training leadership teams. Tell us about this topic.
Yeah, so I've been speaking mostly on burnout is what people are bringing me in for. And that can be, I guess, multifaceted in the sense of burnout can lead to less productivity or high turnover. So those are kind of really the main reasons people bring me in is, okay, how can we optimize our people so that they're performing at their best and so that they're not leaving our company?
Yeah. Where did this come from? Like, how did you get into this?
Yeah, I mean, even looking back at my own story, started in sales maybe many years ago now, but early on in my career, I was selling life insurance for a small season.
That's an immediate burnout. I'm joking.
Well, it was for me. I mean, I was, just hustler, grinder, outworking everybody else. Wasn't necessarily the best salesperson, but I had one week where I sold 80 policies, and that was one-to-one, face-to-face. So I did about 100 meetings that week. And it started at 5 a.m. where I was actually starting my meetings at 5 a.m. and then all the way till 1 a.m. the next morning. And the end of the week, I can picture I was sitting in my office.
I mean, literally, you're being no exaggeration.
No. I know people think of the math on that and they're like, I don't actually even know how that's possible. But I was scheduling really short meetings with people and basically like, hey, buy this policy.
You're about to die. Quickly sign this.
Yes. So yeah, I can picture sitting in my office. CEO of the company called me up and he said, hey, Caleb, you just won this major award with the company. And we're going to fly you and your wife out. You're going to have the fanciest dinner of your life. And we're going to talk about your future within the company. And I said, hey, that's fantastic. I appreciate that. But I'm quitting. And he was like, what the heck? Like, you made 15K this week. Last year you were making, whatever it was in a year, So he was like, how is it that you're quitting after making all this money? I just don't get it. And my answer was, man, I just feel burnt out. Like my relationship doesn't feel like, my relationship with my wife doesn't feel like it's in the right place. My health doesn't feel like it's in the right place. I was just so tired. I can picture like driving home, like slapping myself in the face. My eyes were twitching. I just got to this place where I was like, all right, pump the brakes on everything. I got to stop and reevaluate my life. And from there, I've really tried to rebuild my life in such a way that I want to function at my best all the time, but I want to do that in a way that's sustainable. And I found out that what worked for me is hopefully working for other people. And so people started asking me to come speak. And now that's essentially what I'm doing full time is traveling, speaking all over the country.
Wow. Okay. So what type of when you showed up and speaking, keynotes and things like that, workshops that you're training on, what are some of the things that you're resonating so well with the audience and people who are listening?
Well, I think the first thing that I see within organizations is we love talking about competency, right? So we love if we have, a salesperson and we say, how do we make this person a better salesperson? We might say, okay, how are you handling objections? What's your prospecting look like? We might start to train the competency side of things. But for example, last night I was here in Chicago speaking to a group that does auto collision. And so I said, hey, tell me, what are the top 3 reasons that people get in car crashes? And they said distracted driving, they're drowsy when they're driving, or they're on some kind of substance. Or maybe a fourth one would be road rage. Well, none of those things have to do with competency. Rarely when someone gets in a car accident, they don't say, I just didn't know the stop sign meant that I should stop there. It's like we don't need to teach people how to be better drivers. We need to teach people how to show up in a right state. And so, your salesperson could be a 9 out of 10 salesperson, but if they show up on Monday morning hungover, overtired, just got in a fight with their spouse, just found out that their kid is sick, they have a lot of issues going on that's going to affect their performance. And so usually when I'm sitting with leaders, a lot of times people think workplace performance is static. So again, you're a 9 out of 10 leader. That's what it looks like on a regular basis. But the data would show that fluctuates regularly. That if we surveyed your people, they would say, well, this week, Jonathan was a 3 out of 10 leader because he had some stuff going on at home and he was a little bit more snappy and a little less inspiring. So I wanted to look at, okay, what are the levers that we can kind of adjust to make sure that our people are not just know how to do their job well, but are showing up on a regular basis and actually executing and getting results.
Wow. That's, I mean, you're putting a different spin on some of these things that we often talk about creating high performing teams and finding high performers, things like that. But I also do acknowledge that we're in the people business and there isn't a science to hiring or in science to engagement or science to retaining people. Because I mean, you showed up here today, you left a family, you got kids, right?
Yeah.
Young kids.
Yeah.
And I would imagine this morning when you left the house, maybe there was some drama. In my house this morning, I woke up to 4 piles of dog vomit. So right before about to go into podcast mode. And I'm like, oh my gosh, does that affect my psyche? Does it affect the way I show up? Yeah, it has an impact, the entire week. These things affect what's going on in my life today is very different from what was going on in my life 90 days ago or a year ago. And so we do these, the ebbs and flows and ups and downs. And we don't really look at that a lot when it comes to managing and engaging people a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, very rarely do we acknowledge that life outside of work affects them.
Mm-hmm.
Like we don't really take into consideration on that. So, what are some of the things that you actually put into place that help people like figure these things out? Like how do companies, what do they do when they hear you talk?
Yeah. So I listened to countless podcasts. I read so many books on this issue. I don't know how many business owners I interviewed. I mean, countless, probably over 100 business owners. Basically anything I do in life, I'm pretty all in, So, and what I found is burnout's a pretty complicated issue, but I could kind of categorize the burnout issues into 3 silos where I said, okay, here's basically, in my opinion, I could be wrong. You could share some things with me that maybe I'm missing, but I said, it seems like there's basically 3 things, at least within the workplace, that would cause burnout for people. And those 3 things would be essentially too much pain, not enough pleasure, and not enough rest. So what I mean by that is too many stressors. So someone could get burnt out because their coworker is obnoxious, they're a bad apple, and that is the stressor that is driving them into the ground. The other one could be not enough enjoyment in their work. They're not connected to the mission. They don't feel like what they're doing matters. The payoff isn't enough for them. So they would say, yeah, my workplace isn't stressful, but I'm just bored. I'm just staring at the clock all day. Yeah. And then the third one, even if those 2 are in place, you have to rest. I believe rest is a standalone issue. And I've done a 3-hour workshop just on rest alone. And I think the data on rest in any industry would show that, for example, nurses that work 12-hour shifts would make 3 times more mistakes than nurses that work an 8-hour shift. Most truck driving accidents happen after they've been driving for 9 hours. And so there is actually trackable data where we can say, here's how much somebody's working in their work week, and here's where we start to see the performance drop-offs.
I love stats.
Yeah.
Just keep spitting them out. What else? Through somebody's day, if somebody's working, they say I work a 60-hour work week. What about capacity? Like some people can do more than others, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like some people are like, oh, I can only do it. Oh, that was the negativity coming through. Oh, I can only work a 37-hour work week.
Yeah.
Well, somebody says, listen, my 100%, so that I can give my 100% at work, so that I can give my time to my kids or like anything, my community.
Yep.
so that I can be around those I love, or so I can read a book and get refreshed. Here's my 100%. How do we value somebody else's 100%, which is, a third bigger?
Well, there's certainly different capacities. If I told somebody run as fast as you can for as long as you can, certain people are going to have a much higher or a much longer rate that they can sprint, right?
Yeah.
And so,
I say yeah, totally. Yeah, that'll be me. Be on the real high
right,
level there.
right. But eventually, everybody's going to have a drop-off point. So that varies for different people. But there are some things. Let's say, for example, your ability to focus. As far as my research has shown, it's just a scientific fact that a human brain can't sustain intense focus for more than 90 to 120 minutes without some kind of release. So if you sit down for your workday and you try to grind out 4 hours at a time, there's going to be a drop off in your focus at some point in those 4 hours. Yeah. So what I see from a lot of high performers is they're taking 4 or 5 90 to 100-minute work sessions in a day where it's, full focus. For me, it's earplugs in. Like, I am blocking out everything else. I'm not checking my phone, not checking my social media. I know what my objectives are for the day, fully focus. And then I'm taking a break where I go wrestle my kids or I step outside, get some sunshine, something like that. And then I'm back into another session. And so it kind of depends on the intensity of the work and, the capacity of the individual.
What about a quote? The quote says, if you do what you're passionate with, you'll never work a day in your life, that kind of thing. Like, you find out what you really, really love doing, that you can get paid a fair compensation for.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like work. Like,
yeah.
Is there something to that? Or you're like, nah.
I don't know. I think you can fall off the cliff on either side, where I think there's some truth in it that people should try to find something that they're good at doing. When someone's giving a high energy into something, but it's not moving the needle very much. Yeah. Like for me, if you asked me to do administration work, I would be really frustrated because I'm putting in a lot of effort, but I'm seeing very little payoff for it. So that's why it's important to have the right people in the right seats, to quote your book there.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I just think most likely in every job, there's just stuff that we don't want to do. I certainly do loads of things on a regular basis that I'm like, I don't like this, but I think you could find enjoyment in any work. So even if you find yourself in a role that you really don't prefer, I would more so encourage somebody to try to find the enjoyment in it and the meaning in it rather than switch jobs, at least initially. My generation is the generation that's pursued their passion more than any other generation, and they're also statistically the least unhappy in their work.
Least unhappy,
least happy in their role. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. So, and why do you think that is?
I think, and this is something that you talk about, so I'd like to hear your opinion on it. But I think the biggest payoff in the workplace that I've found is not the paycheck; it's the helping of others. So when you're generous, when you're giving, that's where the most joy is found. I have a faith background. There's a scripture that Jesus tells us to love one another. And he says, I write these things so that your joy may be complete. And I do think, or you can quote Tony Robbins, the secret of living is giving. It's that sense of when you are doing something and you feel like you're helping somebody else, that's a huge payoff. And I think the more self-centered we get with work, the more we just settle into unhappiness.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, obviously I'm agreeing with this one just on the whole purpose and meaning. Like, why are we doing what we're doing? Is very a generation that's coming through right now. They just want to know. It's not like, well, it's a job. You sit down, shut up, and do this for the next 40 years, and then you retire. And you retire as fast as you possibly can, so you can do things that you really want to do. Like, wait, but I won't have any health then, and my kids won't like me anymore because I was never there. I was obviously being really extreme. But I think if we can tap into the greater meaning and the purpose behind it, it makes the work. And it's called work for a reason, right? It's like there's work and play. It's great when there's an intersection, but for most people, somebody's got to do some of the not so sexy jobs out there. But if you can tie into purpose in it and think, okay, this is the good that I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes the good is not just actually in the work, but it's after the work, but it's
Mm-hmm.
because of that work, where you take some of the profits or you take some time to do service and care for people. And I think it really does sweeten this thing called work and
Yes.
make it more enjoyable and maybe give a little bit more stamina.
Yeah.
Like it's like when your family vacation's coming up. Usually, well, this is my experience. If I know I'm going on a family vacation, my hours and effort and productivity actually goes up
Mm-hmm.
because I'm building towards this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, I just got to push through a little bit more so that I can go and shut off, throw
Mm-hmm.
my phone away.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to hit it with a hammer sometimes, but I'm motivated to push hard to
Mm-hmm.
give this extra effort because there's such good about to happen. Like
Yeah.
being over, 150% present with my family with zero distractions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you see on some of those things of people pushing extra hard to get is well, let me ask it quite a different way. Is a reason why people are getting burned out and not resting because they're chasing this thing, and it might not be a vacation, but like as much money as I possibly can or whatever. Is that a factor here?
Yeah, it's interesting because I do a lot of work with executive teams. So sometimes I sit with particularly owners. You're the owner of the company, and they might work 60, 70-hour weeks and they don't feel burnt out. And then they have an employee that's working a 35-hour week that says, I feel burnt out. I need to go home and practice some self-care.
Hopefully that employee is not watching the podcast because they're switching off right now.
Well, sorry if I
They're
stepped.
like, screw you.
Sorry if I
hate
stepped on
him.
some toes.
I hate him.
Yeah. But I do think people can get burnt out from working too much, but they can also get burnt out just from not finding the enjoyment in their work. There's a really interesting study done. They took these children that love to draw, and after they finished a drawing, they started to give them a gold star. And at some point, then they took away the gold star. And what they found is the kids didn't like to draw anymore. So what they essentially did is they moved the dopamine release from the work itself to the reward. And so it's one of the things that I think organizations, especially forward-thinking organizations that want to be so incentive-based, that say, hey, you're going to get this, vacation or whatever it is at the end. There's some value to that because I think we should be working for, some sense of payoff in the end. But one of my passions is actually helping people to find the meaning in the work or the enjoyment in the work itself. And so, like for me right now in entrepreneurship, one of the hardest things I've ever done, and I work with teams, where people will say, why don't you come work for me? I'll pay you 5 times what you're getting paid right now. And I'm like, no, I'm going to stay in the struggle of, building something from scratch. So difficult, but the reason I'm still doing it is because I've really fallen in love with the process and how hard it is. Like actually how much I'm failing and how much I learn from the failure. It's changing me as a person. And so I love the work. I even love the hard stuff. I love the stuff that challenges me. And I think if we can help our employees have some measure of autonomy within that, where that's not just follow the script, do this thing, but you feel like this is your little place of creativity where you have some God-given building of value, of meaning, of something that helps somebody else. If they can tap into that, I do think vacations on that back end are great, but I also think today, can you find enjoyment in your work today?
Wow, so much in here. Number one, I'm like realizing, I need to stop like trying to reward my kids to do certain little things, and then you get a little bonus, and it's kind of like then they get to the point where they're like, well, what am I going to get for it? I'm like, I just asked you to take the trash cans out,
Yeah.
Well, what do I get?
Yeah.
Like you get to eat, that's what you get to do. No, it's not that bad, but it's like it is. But I can see how we train people with those dopamine rushes and rewards for things which would be normal, like. I got recently asked, like, should we pay people extra or give people some type of reward for doing servicing, caring for their community?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, no. Like, let's just hire people who care for their community. Like, that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna let's make sure our team deeply care about their community. And if they don't deeply care about it, that's totally fine. Like,
Mm-hmm.
but they got to be people who care. Like when they
Mm-hmm.
see a need, they go, "I want to help," versus "not my problem."
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, what if I pay you to help the problem? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be, I don't want to surround myself with those types of people, which we don't. But a couple of things. One question is, how do you make sure, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as a founder, as somebody who's got this deep passion and a conviction, that you have the answer to help companies
Mm-hmm.
solve a problem? How do you make sure you don't fall prey to the same issue that you're going around preaching about?
Oh yeah, I have to eat my own oatmeal, as they say, often. Where I'm traveling all over the country. This last month, I was in Silicon Valley, I was in Georgia, I was in New Orleans. Again, last night I was in Chicago. I have 4 kids, 5, 3, 2, and a 5-month-old. Do a lot of volunteer work throughout the week. I did a fitness competition this year, so I'm doing a lot. I have a lot of output, which means I have to be so strategic on input. So I have to
Okay.
really measure of, okay, if this is how much you want to accomplish, like I have a full on action plan for how I'm not going to get burnt out. And so far it's going really well. I don't
It's
feel,
a written down plan?
no, it's just in my
Okay.
head.
Interesting. I thought you'd
Um,
have that written down. You're an action man. Come on now.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm always tinkering with things,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but whether it be the rest side of things, the stress side of
Yeah.
things, or the payoff side of things. And probably my wife is more at risk for burnout than I am,
Yeah.
with me traveling and whatnot.
Yeah.
So, I think as a husband, I have to be
What do you just tell her? Like, take some rest. Like, I'm
totally
finished.
suck it up. Um, yeah, so I have to be really diligent with my wife, to insist at times that she takes rest
Yeah.
or does these things. And I think that's I was talking with a CEO recently, and he said that he had an administrative assistant. Often they're the ones that they love helping people, they take on too much. And he said, how are you? She said, doing great. And he said, for real, are you taking on too much? Broke down and cried, all these things. And he was like, okay, I am taking these things off your plate. He sent an email to the rest of the organization. No one can ask her for all these little favors that you ask her. She's my executive assistant. Like, I'm removing things off her plate. So he had to kind of step in as a leader and say, I'm
Yeah.
protecting your time.
That's a great
So I
example.
think as a husband, I do have to do that with my wife, but I also think leaders have to be really good at managing kind of the energy levels
Yeah.
of the people that we lead. So,
Oh, that's good. I have a life coach, and also known as a therapist, but we call him a life coach. It sounds less, stigma with it now. And he said to me at one point a few years back, he said, "Wow, you're the least strategic CEO that I work with." And I'm like, "What?" And I go, "What do you mean?" Suddenly take offense to that. And he goes, "Like you have no strategy for rest."
mm,
And I'm like, "Well, and I've sort of come back, and he goes, so walk me through your strategy of rest." And I was like, and he's like, "That's not a strategy."
mm,
And he goes, "When you have a business plan, a business strategy, where you want to go the next 3 years and 5 years and 10 years, here's the map. You've got it all laid out. And here are the values. And here's the structure. Here's this." And he goes, "But you don't have any strategy for rest." And I'm like, "Oh, gosh, I see what you're saying." And he goes, "If you're going to go that distance and if you're going to go that far and you've got a plan to get there, you better have worked out how you're going to get refreshment, recoup, downtime, like what refreshes your own physical body, your own soul. Like, what are you doing to invest in that?
mm-hmm,
That's not driven by, I got to keep going. I got to hit my goal faster because I like
mm,
crushing goals." And he's like, "You'd have no rest goal."
yeah.
Um, and I was like, "Well, isn't that selfish?" And he goes, "Like what?" And he goes, "Selfish." He goes, "It's not about selfish. It's about self-care."
Mm,
Like he goes, "Is self-care selfish?" He's like, "It's like sticking the face mask on, the plane's
yeah.
losing oxygen. You got to stick some oxygen in your own face first before
Mm-hmm,
you try and help others." And I'm like, "Okay." I go, "But how do I say I'm going to go and take care of myself?" And he goes, "Try it, and your family will thank you.
yep.
Try it. They'll thank you because you'll be more present. That try it consistently, and they'll thank you because you are like engaged more with them in your times together. And I'm like,
Mhm.
wow, okay. So I started practicing it, and it's been helpful.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not I'm not writing a book on burnout or rest or
Yeah.
dealing with workplace stress, but it is something of a journey. So, are you going to write a book?
Yeah, maybe it's someday. So I'm definitely in the research stage right now. I feel like I'm still learning so much. It's one of the reasons I love speaking with these organizations. I try to ask as many questions
Yeah,
as they ask me. So I'm learning loads right now. I do think from a straight performance standpoint, there was a study done in the military where they had Group A and Group B, these marksmen, where they said, Group A, we want you to shoot at the target continuously, no breaks. And Group B, we want you to shoot at the target, but take strategic breaks.
yeah,
And day one, Group A hit the target more often. But by day two, the group that was taking breaks overtook Group A. And by day three, Group B was dominating Group A. Just because as the fatigue set in, Group A just began missing the target more. And
yeah,
so the group that was continuously working was actually less productive. So I think that's one of the reasons that I got into kind of the mental health or self care, burnout, all these words that honestly I have an aversion to.
yeah,
If someone says self care, I feel like I want to slap them.
yeah,
That's just like my natural reaction as a worker. But so many people, I think, in this industry are like, let's take care of our people. And I'm like, that's great. I do think we should take care of our people, but I think I was coming at it from more of a results mindset of
yeah,
like, how do we move the needle? And turns
right.
out taking care of ourselves and our people actually moves the needle as well. And so it was
Yeah,
kind of this fantastic revelation for me of like, oh, we can take care of our people and that will also grow the business. Like
yep.
these things aren't opposed to one another.
That's interesting. I'm thinking as a kind of my business owner hat on, going like, how do you rhythmically put rest in for everybody with it? Anyway, that's another put some thought into that. But I remember sitting at I was at an elementary graduation, just funny, elementary school graduation, end of year, and one of my kids, and the kind of keynote was one of the elementary school kids standing up and giving the school address, and he started talking about the old classic story of two people having a log chopping contest, of tree chopping contest, and they both go at it really hard, and then one of them, and after 5 minutes, sits down and starts sharpening his
Mm-hmm.
axe, and then he goes again. The other guy's like, I'm gonna take the lead. I'm gonna take the lead. He's sitting down sharpening his axe. But a classic story of
Yep.
you got to sharpen the saw or sharpen the axe because it makes you a heck of a lot more, effective at doing what you're doing. But I'm like talking to seeing these little like kids talking about sharpening the saw in their life and how we need to take rest. I'm like, what? Like from what? Like
Yeah.
life's so easy.
Yeah.
But I came away, took my kind of like the mocking, like, yeah, it's so cute, laughing thing, combine that with somebody telling me you're the least strategic CEO
Yeah.
because you don't sharpen the saw. I'm like, oh, I see this. There's some interesting a generation coming through. We had a podcast guest recently talking all about um, well, they just kept bringing up this whole topic of rest and refreshment and burnout and how it ties to just the sense of belonging in the organization.
Mm-hmm.
And I shared about how one of our team members said in front of the whole company, their sort of highlight of the week was one of their team members, like right before a meeting, the director said, "I'm sorry," to one of their direct reports, "I can't show up. I'm breaking down. I'm losing it.
Mm.
Can you cover for me? Can you cover with this client meeting?" And just that rawness and the sense of, like, to be able to say that,
Mm.
like, I need help or I need to sharpen the saw, even though this is an inconvenience to other people, I need to do it. Otherwise, I'm not going to make it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's an aspirational place to get to in the company where everyone feels that they don't have to kind of put on this front of like, I'm trucking ahead, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Um, and everyone's. I mean, I think probably the dynamic of everyone being different
Mm-hmm.
is everyone wiring different. Like some people need more like we talk about in the company at Titus. Like, hey, if you need 2 weeks, 2 full weeks off a year for rest, to do that. If you need 7, do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, figure out what you need and and work out how you're going to get it in there.
Yeah.
According to you, everyone's got their clear performance objectives, so they know they've got to hit their stuff done. But it's probably easier said than done. Just like, oh, figure it out, So then we're like now trying to, hey, can everyone log their stuff? Tell us what you need at the beginning of the year so that we can not just hold you accountable on rest, but encourage you. You've got that rest thing. Don't kick it off. Don't push it off. So
what are some of the changes that you've made since you said you've been prioritizing self-care a bit more?
When you say you're not working, don't work. If you say you're on vacation, don't go, I'm on my vacation, but you can reach out to me.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of leaders with direct reports, they want to show themselves as available and present because all the stats show having an available, present boss or a leader or a manager or a coach, I can never get hold of them. They're so busy. So then they go on vacation or time off, or I'm on whatever it is, you're not working or you're busy, but to go, I can multitask. I do this thing. I'm like, oh, I'm in meetings all day today, but text me because I can multitask as long as my eyes are on the Zoom looking like I'm on Zoom. So we tell this story like, I'm not present.
Yeah.
What did I just say to them? I'm like, I do the same thing to you when I'm in a meeting. Like people text me and I'm always multitasking. I take a pride in overachieving.
Yeah.
Like that's got to stop. Like I'm even saying like that's got to stop. I don't know if I even believe that statement. Is it like I'm a very productive person. I'm doing lots of things at lots of times.
Yeah.
Multiple things. So when I'm on vacation let me do this. When I'm resting, when I'm going for a walk early in the morning, centering myself and getting myself clear-minded, meditating or whatever, I am finding my strength for the day, for the journey, or finding my strength in a longer period for, vacation or rest. Do I welcome people just to come and like invade that? Or do I actually put the boundaries up and say no?
Yeah.
Because until I say no, anyone who's in the company, direct reports or what they see, they're going to go, that's just what you do. If you're on vacation, you got to show people that you're available.
Yeah.
If I don't lead by example in it, everybody else in the company is going to feel, well, that's what you're supposed to do. Jonathan is available all the time.
Yeah.
Like, so I'm putting my foot down on certain things like that. Like we have one of our business partners, when we started the company, we said, okay, after X amount of years, each of us agree to take a solid month off where you disconnect, you don't take a laptop. There is zero company communication, even between one another, like how things are going. Few things. One is, and it was a whole month, and one is it's good for you to get, refueled and fill the canteen, etc., for the journey ahead. But also, we've got to create companies or organizations where everything's not dependent upon us.
Yeah. Yep.
Like, it's not good leadership or development of people if every decision has to go through somebody. I'm like, that's just not, I'm not really helping other people grow. Like, what's the, I know I'm not allowed to say hit by a bus strategy anymore because that's, so we say win the lottery. If somebody won the lottery and they weren't here tomorrow, what are you going to do? Have you created a culture where people are empowered to make decisions when you're not available?
Yeah.
Or when you're off on vacation or whatever, you're like, oh, they're on vacation, nothing happens. Like, well, maybe we should relook at that. So that's one thing. I think setting boundaries and sticking to them. And for me, I'm better in some seasons than others. So, but yeah, just saying I'm off or I'm doing something personal, and blocking it on my calendar and not sacrificing that. Because at what cost am I sacrificing? And I think probably one of the biggest costs is burnout through the organization, because everybody gets the message. You're supposed to be available when you're at your kid's game, practice. And a book that I read cover to cover years back called Maverick by Ricardo Semler, South American guy, entrepreneur, mega, like owns all kinds of businesses and big business with thousands of employees. He was looking at this whole concept of how people work really, really hard to try and get as much money as they possibly can to retire early, to do things. And he was the one who said, by that point, you don't have your health and your family don't want to be around you because you were never present. And he goes, so he started looking at his own life saying, oh, I'm going to create my own bucket list of what I want to do when I'm successful enough to be able to free myself up to do it. And he goes, all right, now I'm going to start living my life with bucket list days. And so he put a bucket list day every week in his schedule.
Yeah.
And it was time that he didn't do anything else. He just did his bucket list stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, it was one of those things where I'm like, wow, that sounds really crazy. You know, like, but I was an employee of another company. I'm like, can you imagine go to my boss? Like, I'm going to have a bucket list day. You know, like,
Yeah.
they'd look at me like, well, you're insane. So I'm not paying for that, you know, but I think it probably goes to some of this thing of like the sharpening the saw and, you know, yes, you could do that on the weekends.
Mm-hmm.
Fair point. But how do we help encourage people to do that? And do we give them finances to do this? Do we give them the time to do it? Do we give? And I'm like, some of these things I can be like really like pie in the sky about. But he actually created his company doing that. He said people will exchange rather than earning the money to do it later when they don't have the time left or the health. Let's give it back and we'll sell those days to them now.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were buying back time when they have life and energy and health to do the things on their bucket list. It's one of those kind of like very challenging and inspiring, which I like those type of people, books around how do you look at time and work and energy and rest and bucket lists and can people exchange? So it was that book that actually helped me with the time off concept, that people can have flexible time off. If they want to work more, they get to share in the profits that they're generating. If they want to work less and take more time off, they can as well.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how we created it, Titus. And we realized though there is an addictive drug in productivity in our culture here in the States, and especially if you're going to pay me more money to do it.
Yeah.
We used to have this thing of like everyone has a goal. Once you hit your goal, you're done. You can keep working if you want. And we had somebody hit their goal by October something for the whole year, and they're like, "I'm not actually incentivized to work from here on out." They worked, 60-hour work week, and so they stopped working. They didn't work the rest of the year. And it was, as a business owner, I'm like, what is happening? You know, like they're just not working for 3 months, you know,
right.
But we pay them a salary, and they were like, yeah, peace out. And, you know, doing this kind of like, isn't that great? You know, like, and I did think, you know, it was like one of those kind of mesmerizing moments. Like, this is really great, I think. But if everyone did it, it would be like a disaster, you know?
Yeah.
So then we said, okay, we'll give them, if you keep working, we'll give you a bigger piece of the pie, you know, any profits they generate. But that is an addictive drug in a culture which is quite, a national culture and a company culture is quite, you can get all of the levers go really, really well to create the biggest problem that you're trying to attack.
Yeah.
And I think we've had a tendency at Titus to do that, to create this machine that people grow. And we say it's in our growth, it's in our DNA, it's in our entrepreneurial spirits. And so we celebrate that versus a number of years back, somebody said, hey, you don't make a big deal about everybody when they hit 100%. You're just celebrating the 150%ers. I'm like, oh, yeah. Like, I worked my tail off to hit 100%. And then I was strategic and I invested the rest of my time in the things that were really important outside of work so that I can be 100% inside work. And we're like, oh, we got to celebrate that too. So we're trying to, I mean, I'm like you, I'm a constant learner, seeing how the best ways of doing things, observation, trying to listen to the people. But it is sometimes, you know, people are not always really honest with you. Because they don't know what they can and can't say without getting, you know, being seen as a non-company driver. I don't want people to think I'm not entrepreneurial or not a high-performing individual. So how do we create environments where people can go like, I'm just tired.
It's kind of a paradox. I mean, it's a challenge because certainly we want to celebrate great work and great performance. But, you know, certainly when I was doing life insurance the whole time, you know, on my way to burnout, people were like, yeah, he's doing it. He's breaking all these records, you know, and it was
you need to buy some life insurance. It's like, you can buy your own.
Right. And it's like, that's kind of the worst news is I only worked there for 6 months. So it was like they hired me, they trained me, and I quit all within a 6-month period of time.
And you crushed it like top performer.
And so it was this like the worst case scenario for both of us,
Yeah.
like for the CEO to say, I invested all this time training you and now I'm just starting to see you crush it and now you're quitting. It's horrible for him. But
Yeah.
the whole time he was clapping for me on my way up to high performance, So it's one of those weird things of like, yeah, we celebrate when somebody's crushing it, but we have to make sure that they're not, what's the cost,
Yeah.
of, okay, Caleb's selling all these policies. What is he trading for that success? And for me, it was my health and my relationships, which is pretty common for people. And so
Sure.
when people get to a place where they say, my job is killing me, that's when they quit. Because it's a survival mechanism where they say, okay, this job is now taking over my life. So hard stop. And so, okay, how do we get people to where they're not, just on or off, but say, let's pace ourselves a little bit. Let's make it sustainable. And so I don't know that I've necessarily figured out the implementation side of these things. Again, every industry is different and you're always tinkering with different things. But I do think people need to prioritize rest. And if it doesn't start with the leadership, then you have no chance. Because you could say, Caleb, come in, do this wellness program with us, whatever. And then if you're sending out emails at 1 a.m. and like setting that standard for people, they're like, oh, I should probably be working at 1 a.m. My boss is working at 1 a.m.
I just do a delayed send to go at 1 a.m, but I send it like 4 p.m.
To impress people. Yeah.
I'm not saying I've never done that. Back in a company that really, like, decade ago, I saw it all around. I'm like, flipping heck, why? It was humorous to me. I'm like, why are people working at 11, 12, 1 a.m?
Yeah.
And I'm like, so I there was one day all of my emails through the whole day, I put a delayed send to go.
That's ridiculous.
Just so like, they didn't hear from me all day, and then suddenly all these emails at midnight.
Yeah.
I was fast asleep. It was really funny. I just wanted to see what would happen. Like, is it like, what's going on? Was it like, are you okay? Why were you working in the night? Or is it like, wow, you're crushing it.
Yeah.
Burning the candle, huh? And that was the response. And I was like, I'm out. I can't do this.
Yeah.
Is that celebrated? And I was doing it to take a jab at the big machine.
Yeah. I've had so many CEOs sit across the table from me, telling me that they're wearing a $40,000 watch. And I'm like, what's your marriage life like? And they're like, oh, I've been married 6 times, And I'm like, you think it's really impressive. You've had success in one area of your life, but I think we have to redefine success, And so it's like, okay, are people actually finding success in multiple areas of their life? And so, one of the things I've done as well is, I love studying billionaires. It's really, interesting to me.
That's why you're sitting here with me.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
But, I look at someone like Jeff Bezos and it's like, he's not making more money than me because he works longer, harder. He's making more money than me because he knows more than me. He understands leverage. He's with the quality of his mind is how he's making more money. It's not at some point, longer, harder doesn't equal more dollars. Smarter equals more dollars. And so if I can say, well, what if I condense my time? What if I'm only working 5 or 6 hour days, but they're intensely focused 5 or 6 hour days, and I'm also prioritizing other things? Can I find, can I get smarter even if I'm working in condensed time? And oftentimes you can. So many billionaires would say that the secret to success. I don't know if you've heard the famous story with Warren Buffett and Bill Gates, where they said, in one word, write down the secret of success. They hadn't talked to each other about it. They wrote it down on a piece of paper so they couldn't confer with each other.
Yeah.
They wrote down the same exact word. That word was focus. They said, successful people are focused. Ultra successful people say no to almost everything.
Yeah.
And so for me, if I say, okay, here's my goals that I want to accomplish, my default is not, okay, the way I get there is super high quantity. It's, I want to get there by super high quality decisions. And so can I get there by making really high quality decisions? And the only way I can make really high quality decisions is if I'm not physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually exhausted. So I prioritize. When I get to Monday morning, it's like the Super Bowl for me, where I'm like, I've been prepping all weekend. I've been bored out of my mind, all weekend resting.
But now that don't listen to this.
Well, I mean, there's times where I have a work project that I'm
Yeah.
so excited about, and I'm like, I'm pushing it off till Monday,
Yeah.
but it's like I rested and it's like I'm gearing up. So that way, when I hit it on Monday morning, I'm just like, boom, let out of the
Come
gates. I'm
on.
working hard
Yeah.
because I've prioritized rest. And it's the way athletes function for
This is
sure.
great.
And so I think that's how we can help our teams as well.
Okay. Tell me you're putting together some kind of a system that people can follow for this.
Yeah, so every time I speak, people are like, "What's your implementation program?" And I am really excited because I've pulled together some other people in the space. We have actually put together a 3-month wellness program. Right now, it's just for executive teams because, again, I believe if leadership don't get it, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But we start with an assessment, so a big assessment on those big 3 things, where are you at? It's something that they can then take to their teams, and I think the first point is really just understanding where your people are. So let's do a big assessment and see, okay, here's the main areas for improvement within our organization. Then we'll do some coaching and training, but then also how do we build this into our culture? And sometimes it's small changes. I did this actually the first organization I did this with. I talked to 2 of the younger guys. It was a data consulting organization. I said, "What's your day look like outside of work?" They stare at a computer all day at work. They go home, they start playing video games at about 5 or 6 at night. They play till 3 or 4 every single morning. And they start work at 7 or 8 the next morning. Both of them. I said, "You sleep 4 hours a night?" I said, are you exaggerating? You actually sleep 4 hours a night?" They're like, "Yeah, pretty much 4 hours a night."
And what are the quality of that sleep when you're like, wired crazy?
So I said, "You stare at a screen for 8 hours, and then the way that you rest and recover is to stare at a screen for another 8 hours, and you don't sleep." So I'm like, yeah, let's change that one thing. And the owner of the company called me up. He's like, "Man, we loved having you into our company. Our guys are so much less tired, distracted, all these different things, because you actually will rest." That's the thing that people don't understand, is that if you don't prioritize rest, you're going to start using social media or something throughout your day. It's like a need. It's like drinking water. You are at some point going to rest. So we don't want to blend our work and our rest. Let's rest really hard when we're resting. Let's work really hard when we're working. Let's create clear boundaries, and let's optimize both.
Oh, I like this stuff. Okay, so talk me through this. If I go, number one, I want to have you in our company. What does that look like? An engagement look like as a speaking gig or whatever? Another one is like, how do the people listening right now, they go, "I like what I'm hearing. I want to get Caleb in." What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, the main things I'm doing right now is a keynote. So like an hour-long keynote for those are big company meetings typically. A workshop that I've done mostly with executive teams or sales teams is kind of the organizations I know best, or the departments I know best, I should say. And then this wellness program, which is 3 months. So yeah, they can. I'm on all the social media platforms: Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. I check them all.
Like all the time, you're always on them.
I'm
in the
always
evenings,
on
all
them
weekend.
at 1 in the morning.
Just scrolling. You're there, ready for the next ping.
Yeah,
DM me night or day.
Yeah, I mean, my email is just info@calebspitler.com. If you want, for 1 year, I actually primarily studied just sleep, just because I was so interested on it. So I took almost a full year to just study sleep. So I put all the best sleep hacks into a PDF. And if people want that, you can just text sleep to 33777, and it'll automatically text you out that PDF. It's a year's worth of research in one PDF. And because it's not just the quantity of sleep, there's a lot of things you can do to increase your quality of sleep so you wake up more refreshed.
Say that. Okay, text the word sleep.
Yep.
To what number?
33777.
33777.
Yep, you'll get that PDF. My initial goal, I was going to put it into a digital course and then sell it, but now I've kind of moved on from some of that. So
it was too much hard work.
Exactly.
You wanted to keep resting.
Yeah, digital course too. People have to listen all the way through it. I was like, I could probably put this together in one PDF that people could just implement. Exactly.
Say no to stuff. No,
yeah,
I love that. It's great. So info at Caleb Spitler. Assuming Caleb Spitler is a website as well.
Yeah, calebspitler.com.
Okay, cool. That's great, man. It's so cool to have you here, and it's cool to hear what you're doing, what you're focusing on right now. And I'm sold. I'm in. I get excited about a lot of things, but I'm really intrigued now of the impact of optimization. We talk about talent optimization a lot at
Mm-hmm.
Titus. How do you optimize your talent? And it's not just how you get stuff out of your people, but how do you give to your
Yeah.
people that makes a real lasting impact in their lives. And I really genuinely believe the investment in our people to make them healthy and whole,
Mm-hmm.
in all aspects of their life. If we provide that or offer it to our people, not everyone wants it. We offer things in our company to people, and they're like, I don't want any of that stuff. I don't want that. I'm like, all right, well, you don't have to take it then.
Yeah.
That's fine. But for some people, they do, and they realize the value in it. So I love what you're doing, and I think it's totally cheering you on and the success of this. And I know you're gonna have an impact on some of our clients as well. So thanks for being on the show today. Thank you.
I appreciate it, Jonathan. You're such an inspiration to me as well. And I think Titus does some of this stuff better than almost any company I know. So
Ah, come
keep
on,
doing
man.
what you're doing.
Thanks
So.
a lot.